You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. I'm gonna start with something pertaining to Massachusetts sports, something that affects a lot of people in Boston and its suburbs, but not in a good way. And every Bostonian or Massachusetts resident will agree that it's not good what happened. What's that? Oh, you thought I was going to start with Cam Newton? No. That's my second story. I want to start with Red Sox Rays. And the reason why isn't because the Red Sox lost. I mean, granted, any day the Red Sox lose is a good one. Instead, I want to talk about who they lost to. The Tampa Bay Rays. The reality is, I may have sold the Rays short a little bit. Saying that their pitching staff doesn't scare me. Expressing some confidence in the Yankees' ability to beat them in a 5-game series. Look, God only knows what's going to happen in a Yankees-Rays ALDS this year, and it seems like we're going to get that. But the Yankees are going to have their hands full, and the way that the Rays are playing right now, forget the Yankees, just the way the Rays are playing right now makes them an incredibly scary team. They've won 8 straight. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They're leading all of baseball in total runs scored with 702. They're 5 games up on the Astros for the best record in the American League. And they're only 1 game behind the Giants for the best record in all of baseball. I mean, one thing that you've got to pay attention to with the Rays is their lineup. You've got Mike Zunino, a catcher that can't hit for average to save his life, but he's probably going to get 30 home runs. If you have a catcher that can hit 30 home runs, that's invaluable. You've got Yandy Diaz at first. Solid player. Not great, but he holds his own. At second, Brandon Lau. He has over 30 home runs. At short, Wander Franco, formerly the best prospect in all of baseball. At third, Joey Wendell, very good player. In the outfield, some combination of Randy Arozarena, Kevin Kiermaier, Manuel Margot, and Austin Meadows. DHing is Nelson Cruz. Someone who we raved about when it came to him going to the Rays. We loved that fit. What I'd probably do in the outfield is put Meadows in left, Margot in center, and Arozarena in right. And then Kiermaier can come in as a late-inning defensive replacement. But if you want to start Kiermaier, I'm fine with it. We know his glove. I'll say this, you've got to keep Arozarena, because he's hitting .274 with 17 home runs and 58 RBIs, and we all remember what he did in the postseason. And Manuel Margot, I just feel like, is the better offensive player than Kiermaier. Gives you more speed, gives you a little more power, gives you a better bat overall. I'm not going to die on the sword of Margot over Kiermaier. If you really want Kiermaier in over Margot, okay. But if I was Kevin Cash, I'd probably put Margot in over Kiermaier. And Austin Meadows is going to hit 25 home runs. He's going to have 100 RBIs. You've got to have him in the lineup. This lineup is stacked. It's a lineup that on paper, when you hear the names, you may not think is as good as it actually is. But realize, they're third in the American League in home runs. They're sixth in hits, third in doubles, second in triples, fifth in stolen bases. It's just a well-rounded lineup. It's not fantastic. It's not Murderer's Row on the 27 Yankees, but it's good. It's certainly good enough to get the job done in October. And one thing that I've mentioned is my lack of faith in the pitching staff. Look, I stand by that. The only pitcher that really terrifies me is Shane McClanahan. Luis Patino, you've got to respect. He has a lot of talent. He was the crown jewel of the Snell trade, but I don't think he's a world beater. After that, it falls off. Ryan Yarbrough hasn't been great. Michael Wacha has been garbage. Chris Archer hasn't been anything. The thing is, though, what are the Rays always good at? Developing their relievers. Now, we all remember what happened last year. Pulling Snell in Game 6, one of the worst decisions in World Series history. But realize, Snell is a Padre. Do you really think that Cash is going to be in that position again? We've got our starter absolutely dealing through 5 1/3. He's only given up 2 hits. He was pitching shutout baseball. So let's pull him and shorten the game. I don't see the Rays being in that position again. It's nothing against McClanahan. It's nothing against Patino. I just don't see them delivering that type of performance. It's going to be on the bullpen to win games for the Rays in October. So let's look at the Rays bullpen. It's absolutely fantastic. I'll just go through some of the names really quickly. Diego Castillo, Andrew Kittredge, Pete Fairbanks, Colin McHugh, Drew Rasmussen, JP Fireisen, JT Chargois, Adam Conley. And keep this in mind. The Rays should get Ryan Thompson back at some point in time next month. And Nick Anderson should make his season debut next month. So that bullpen is just going to get better and better. If you need more depth, Louis Head pitched well this year. Through 20 games, he was 1-0 with a 3.16 ERA. There's no question about this. The Rays bullpen this year is light years better than it was last year. I mean, that does bring up the obvious question. Can you rely on a bullpen in October? The Yankees have done that a lot. It hasn't worked. You saw what happened in Game 6. Kevin Cash couldn't wait to get into his bullpen. Nick Anderson blew the game. That all but ended Blake Snell's time with the Rays. I mean, I don't want to slam my fist on the table and say that you can't rely on a bullpen to get you through October. I think one thing we know is that you shouldn't rely on openers to get you through October. We saw what happened with the Yankees in Game 2 of the ALDS last year. We saw what happened with the Rays in Game 4 of the ALDS last year. I think you do need a starter to give you a little bit of length. But even if that length is just 3 to 4 innings, let's say Ryan Yarbrough gives the Rays 3 innings. Think about the relievers that can come in afterwards. Anderson, Thompson, Fairbanks, Kittredge, Castillo, McHugh, Rasmussen, Fireisen, Chargois. You're fine. You're covered for those innings. I understand that you're burning your bullpen for the next day. I understand that you're relying on everyone to be on that given night. And that is risky. But the theory makes a little bit of sense. Here's how it makes sense. If you have a starter that you know is only going to go 3 to 4 innings, in order to shut this game down, you need a lockdown bullpen. Whether it's a long reliever coming in and giving you a lot of innings, or whether it's just a parade of relievers. You will need the bullpen to chew up some innings. There's no question about this in my mind. Out of all the playoff teams right now, the Tampa Bay Rays have the best bullpen in the American League. And depending on how you feel about the Giants bullpen in all of baseball, I mean, a Rays-Giants World Series, which is very possible, will be a battle of the bullpens. Those games are going to go long. They're going to be like 4 hours long. You're going to see a ton of pitching changes. You're going to see a ton of relievers. You're going to see a lot of starters get pulled quickly. Maybe it won't be the easiest World Series to get into for the casual baseball fan, but I'll tell ya, the Rays and Giants match up really well. I can't say the Rays and Dodgers because we all know what happened last year, but it wouldn't surprise me if we got a Rays-Giants World Series. I'll say this. I feel like this postseason is wide open. I can make a case for the Rays to win the pennant, the Yankees, the White Sox, and the Astros to win the American League. As for the National League, I can make an argument for the Giants, the Dodgers, the Brewers, and the Padres to all win the National League. I mean, that Brewers bullpen is stacked. We talk about their rotation, led by Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff, but that bullpen is stacked too. If we get a Brewers-Giants NLCS or a Rays-Brewers World Series, that too is going to be a battle of the bullpens. This October is wide open, and it's very possible that a team like the Rays can come out on top, especially given the way they're playing right now. Alright, now it's time for the NFL Valk talk, specifically on Cam Newton being cut. To say that this is stunning would be an understatement. I don't think it's stunning that Mac Jones was named the starter. I think we all thought that was a distinct possibility. I mean, all throughout this preseason, Jones showed a really good command of the offense, made good decisions, played really well against the Giants. Meanwhile, you look at how Cam Newton did in the preseason. He did not play well against Washington. He played well against the Eagles, but against the Giants, he was dreadful. And at this stage of his career, Cam Newton isn't going to win you anything. If you spend the 15th overall pick on a quarterback, there is a part of you that wants to see him play. And I'm talking right away, no time to marinate, no time to learn the speed of an NFL regular season game. Go out there week 1 and win us a football game against the Miami Dolphins. And I'll get to the Dolphins in a minute because an interesting report just came out about them. The thing is, though, I think we've learned that the best thing for these young quarterbacks coming into the NFL is to give them time to marinate. There are obviously exceptions to that rule, guys like Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow, but realize something. Lamar Jackson didn't start right away, Josh Allen didn't start right away, Baker Mayfield didn't start right away, Patrick Mahomes didn't start right away, Aaron Rodgers didn't start right away, Justin Herbert didn't start right away. Meanwhile, you take a look at a guy like Sam Darnold, or even a little further back, Geno Smith. They start right away, they crash and burn. I'm not saying that if guys like Mahomes and Allen and Jackson, etc., had started week 1, they wouldn't have balled out. But realize, that's a common thread that all those quarterbacks have. It's really hard to overlook that. It's hard to not notice that and say, maybe we should give our rookie quarterback, the future face of the franchise, a chance to marinate a little bit. I mean, realize, Eli Manning learned behind Kurt Warner. Eli won 2 Super Bowls. I think there is something there. We'll never know how those guys would have done if they were thrown into the fire week 1. Would they still be great? Probably. But all the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now didn't start right away. It's hard to overlook that fact. See, the thing is, when you start a rookie quarterback, that die is cast. You really can't backtrack from that. That's never a good look. It always creates controversy. It always creates drama. It always creates intrigue. It never ends well. I can't think of a quarterback starting as a rookie, then being benched, then coming back later to great success. And for those of you who throw out Troy Aikman, no. The reason that Aikman didn't start all 16 games was because Aikman broke a finger. That's why Steve Walsh started 5 games. So once that die is cast, it's very hard to backtrack from it. You've got to be 100% confident that your rookie quarterback is ready to go week 1. I feel that way about Trevor Lawrence. I feel that way about Zach Wilson. I can't say that I'm there on Justin Fields. I can't say that I'm there on Trey Lance. And I definitely can't say that I'm there on Mac Jones. It takes more than playing well in 3 preseason games for me to say with 100% confidence that you should start week 1. There's a lot that goes into that. What you did in college, how you interviewed, mini camp, training camp. There's a lot that goes into it. Mac Jones got thrust into the spotlight mainly because of circumstance. Tua gets hurt, so that's how we know the name at first. He balls out his last year at Bama, undefeated season, okay, fantastic. Gets drafted by the Patriots, good for him. It seems like he's all set to be the backup quarterback. Then Cam Newton has a misunderstanding with the COVID protocols. So Jones gets thrust into the spotlight again. Look, it's easy to draw the parallels between Jones and Brady. Bledsoe gets hurt, so Brady plays. Cam Newton is forced to miss some time because of COVID protocols. Mac Jones seizes the moment. I just don't see it with Jones. Forget being the next Brady, okay? Yeah, that's probably what you want as a Patriots fan, but come on. There's only going to be one Brady. There's only going to be one man to win 7 Super Bowls. There can only be one GOAT, and that's Brady. I'm just talking about being a solid starting quarterback. Are we sure that can be Jones? From what I saw of Jones, I saw someone who's not going to make a lot of mistakes. Someone who's going to make smart decisions, but someone who's also going to play conservative. Someone who's going to be afraid to make mistakes. Someone who's not going to push the envelope. Sometimes you want that in your quarterback. Sometimes you don't. It's very weird. Okay, there are situations where a quarterback will throw a ball into an incredibly tight window. And one play, it may be caught, and the next play, it may be intercepted. The best quarterbacks know when to take that risk and how to minimize it to the best of their ability. Like, we've seen the commercials with the catch probability 13% or something like that, and the quarterback delivers a perfect throw. I mean, that's part of the appeal of a guy like Mahomes or Wilson. A guy who's going to throw these balls that, when you watch the replay, you say, how on earth did he make that throw? You've got to know when to push the envelope and when to not. I don't think Mac Jones is going to be able to push the envelope enough to be a great NFL quarterback. And when you're taken with the 15th overall pick, you need to be great. You want to tell me you don't want your quarterback to push the envelope? Oh, yes, you do. Otherwise, he's just throwing check down after check down after check down. You know what we call those guys? Game managers. There's a limit to how far a game manager can take you. You don't need to throw 50-yard passes every play, but 10 or 15? Yeah, you should be willing to take that chance. If the window is there, take it. I saw throws that Sam Darnold made where he pushed the envelope and the receiver was open. It was the right decision, he just missed the throw. Does Mac Jones have it in his nature to take that necessary chance and the ability to convert on it? I don't think so. I never liked Mac Jones. This has nothing to do with him being a Patriot. This is going back to Alabama. I just did not see it. In fact, I had Kyle Trask ranked ahead of Jones. I was happy as a Jets fan when the Patriots took Jones. I'm even happier now that they anointed him the starter. For the first time in a really long time, it's indisputable that the Jets have the second best quarterback in the AFC East. And speaking of the Jets, that is where I want Cam Newton to go. Please, 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 Joe Douglas, if you have a brain in your head, you will get Cam Newton to the Jets. Every rookie quarterback needs a veteran quarterback on the roster to help him out. Baker Mayfield and Justin Herbert both had Tyrod Taylor. Kyler Murray had Brett Hundley. Josh Allen had Matt Barkley. Lamar Jackson had Joe Flacco. Patrick Mahomes had Alex Smith. Eli Manning had Kurt Warner. Aaron Rodgers had Brett Favre. There are going to be trials and tribulations along the way. You need a quarterback there who has been there before and can help the rookie navigate that. Sometimes it's okay to not want to talk to your coaches. Think about it this way. Let's say the coach is telling you to do something specific, but you don't understand why. So you want to do something different. The veteran backup quarterback can say, hey, this is why he wants you to do that. Sometimes in order for a message to get through, you've got to hear it a different way or hear it from multiple people. That's just human nature. Should you always listen to the coach? The answer is yes, but realize that coach isn't always going to be there. You've got to be able to carry those lessons on when that coach inevitably goes to a different organization. There's truth to the old saying, coaches are hired to be fired. Now think about it. Here's a quarterback in Cam Newton who has been in the NFL since 2011, who started 15 games last year. You could tell that his arm wasn't where it once was, but in all fairness to him, he was responsible for 20 total touchdowns to 10 interceptions. The Patriots did go 7-9 last year. They weren't awful. And here's a guy who has had to deal with outside noise his whole career. Even going back to Auburn, there was controversy. In the Super Bowl, he couldn't escape it. Why didn't he dive for that fumble? All the talk about would he start going forward for the Panthers in 2019. All the speculation on where he'd end up when he was a free agent. Struggling there. Being benched. Hearing people say that he was done. Even saying some of the stupid stuff he said with the Panthers. It's funny to hear a female talk about running routes. Newton has experienced a lot throughout his 10 years in the NFL. He's experienced a lot of highs, a 15-1 season, winning MVP, making the Super Bowl, and he's experienced lows. Being cut by the only team he's ever known, being benched for Jarrett Stidham, and now being cut so that Mac Jones can start. If you were to write down on a piece of paper the ideal backup quarterback for Zach Wilson, it would be Cam Newton. You cannot tell me that he isn't a better fit for the Jets than Mike White and James Morgan. The Jets tried Josh Johnson. It didn't work. For goodness sake, no quarterback on the Jets roster has thrown a pass in the NFL. How can you be a quality backup quarterback when you haven't thrown a single pass in the NFL? Part of the job of being the backup quarterback for the Jets is to help Zach Wilson out. But another part of being the backup quarterback for the Jets is to come in and hold your own if Zach Wilson gets hurt. Knock on wood that doesn't happen, but the NFL's a physical game. Anything can happen. Who do you have more faith in to win you a football game? Cam Newton, Mike White, or James Morgan? Your answer better be Cam Newton. I understand the risk that he's not the player he once was, and he probably wouldn't be thrilled with being a backup. But unless the Texans are going to bring him in, I don't see how he's a starter. Unless he wants to wait in free agency until a quarterback gets hurt. But even then, there's no guarantee that that team is going to go outside the organization to find a new starting quarterback. They may roll with their backup. Like, just hypothetically, if Andy Dalton gets hurt, you've got Justin Fields. You're not signing Cam Newton to be the starter. If Ryan Fitzpatrick gets hurt, you have Taylor Heineke. You're not signing Cam Newton to be the starter. At this very moment, according to OverTheCap.com, the Jets have the 5th most cap space in the NFL. So they can offer Cam Newton a big contract. I'm talking like $5 million. He's not going to get that from another team. The Jaguars are ahead of the Jets in terms of cap space. They have C.J. Beathard. The Broncos are ahead of the Jets in terms of cap space. They have Drew Lock. Would the Panthers bring him back? Would Newton want to go back? It would be a great story. But I don't know how Newton would feel about going back to the Panthers as their backup. I don't think he would go for that. Washington has Taylor Heineke. They're not going to be interested in Newton. The Jets make perfect sense. They have the worst backup quarterback situation in the NFL. It's really simple. Sign Cam Newton. Hopefully, you never see him play. In a perfect world, all he's doing is teaching Zach Wilson. And if he needs to play, he's shown that he can still find a way to win. Mike White has not done that. James Morgan has not done that. Cam Newton needs to be a Jet. I don't want Nick Foles. I don't want to trade an asset for him when I can just sign Newton. Alright, now let's get to the Dolphins. A really, really interesting report just came out about them. According to Mike Florio of ProFootballTalk.com, the owner of the Dolphins, Stephen Ross, really wants Deshaun Watson. Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald echoes that sentiment, but has also said that the Dolphins don't want to give up an arm and a leg for him. It's only if they can get good value for him that you'll see him as a Dolphin. Think about it from my end as a Jets fan. Tom Brady leaves the AFC East after torturing my team for years. Now I have to deal with the rise of Josh Allen and Deshaun Watson possibly coming to the AFC East. Realize, if none of this legal stuff arose, Deshaun Watson would be a Jet right now. Now I may have to go up against him twice a year. Zach Wilson, you better work out. So this is interesting. This is an owner saying that he's okay with all the negative publicity that's going to come with trading for Watson. When you have that blessing from the owner, if you're the GM, you've got to think seriously about trading for him. Now, God only knows what Nick Caserio really wants for Watson. If he thinks he's going to get a king's ransom of picks, he's dreaming. The only way that he would get that would be if they were conditional picks. Like, I'll give you this first, but if Watson misses X number of games, that pick turns into a lesser pick. I mean, we heard that Watson isn't going to be traded today, but what did I say yesterday? I could see Watson being traded in the infancy of this coming season. If you boil it all down to the ground, it comes out to this. Should the Dolphins trade for Deshaun Watson, given all the negative publicity that you're going to get, and the fact that you have Tua Tagovailoa, coupled with the fact that Deshaun Watson may miss a substantial number of games? The negative publicity, if Ross is okay with it, you need to be okay with it too, as his GM. Is Deshaun Watson going to miss some games? Maybe, maybe not. I have absolutely no idea how that's going to unfold. Tua's interesting, though. We've heard this for a while that the Dolphins aren't sold on Tua. And I just don't get why. It's not his fault that Brian Flores messed with his confidence. Benched him when he shouldn't have. I mean, this is what Tua did his rookie year. He completed 64.1% of his passes, threw for 1,814 yards, through 9 games started. So that's 181.4 yards per game. And he threw 11 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. That's good for a rookie. I'll take that. The potential is there. The talent is there. The upside is there. Here's a guy who, if he hadn't gotten hurt, would have been the first overall pick. Even if Joe Burrow had that monster senior season. If Tua never got hurt, he's a Bengal. But the question that you need to ask is, will Tua ever be as good as Deshaun Watson? I think he's going to be very good. But realize, Deshaun Watson is great. He led the NFL in passing yards last year. He completed 70.2% of his passes last year. Does Tua have that potential? I think the answer is yes. I really like Tua. I'm not giving up on him. But it's tough for me to say that he'll ever be as good as Watson. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Having said that, though, do you want to bet on Tua? Or do you want to give up a bunch of picks to get Watson? You're going to need to give up a sizable amount to get Watson. Maybe not a king's ransom, but a pretty notable haul. I mean, I'll say this. If I'm the Texans, I want Tua. If I'm going to trade Deshaun Watson to the Dolphins, I've got to get Tua. He's better than Tyrod Taylor. He's better than Davis Mills. Give me Tua. He can be my franchise quarterback for the next decade or so. I have no idea how this situation is going to end. Whether it's Watson being suspended for a long time or spending a lot of time in prison. But I'll say this. If you have an owner that's okay with the negative press, you've got to think long and hard about adding Deshaun Watson. Will Tua ever be better than him? I don't think so. But will Tua plus all the picks you have to give up be better than him? Maybe. It depends on if you hit on those picks or not. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I don't envy Chris Greer at all. Alright, so Newton's going to be the only cut that I'm going to talk about because it's not too often that you see a former MVP get cut. I don't really like talking about cuts this time of year. It's cut down day. You're going to see cuts. It's not worth talking about unless it's a guy like Newton, a former MVP. But it is worth talking about trades. With cut down day also comes trades. And we've had 5 recent trades. I love talking about these. Let's get into it now. I'll start with the Jaguars trading Sidney Jones to the Seahawks in exchange for a 6th rounder in this coming NFL draft. Once upon a time, when I was playing Madden, I traded for Sidney Jones and I turned him into a really good cornerback for the Jets. I mean, I like Jones. It took him a while to really get going in the NFL, but in 2019, according to Pro Football Focus, he had a 63.5 overall grade, and last year it went up to 68.1. The Seahawks did need to upgrade their cornerback depth. After they traded for John Reed, they went out and cut him. They have no depth in the secondary. If something goes wrong there, they're in trouble. So yes, trade for Jones. It makes perfect sense. To give up a 6th rounder for him is more than fair. Good job by the Seahawks. Moving on now to the Chiefs, trading Yasir Durant to the Patriots in exchange for a 7th rounder in this coming draft. And I really don't get this move for the Patriots. In limited time last year, Durant did not play well. He had just a 45.1 overall grade. He started the last game of the season for the Chiefs against the Chargers. He had a 52.9 overall grade in that game. I didn't like him coming out of Missouri. He was an undrafted free agent. I was surprised he lasted all year with the Chiefs. And I like the Patriots' O-line depth. I think it's very strong. I didn't think they needed to make this trade. I'm not going to bang tables over it because all they gave up was a 7th rounder. But I do think that the Chiefs did good to get a 7th for a guy who really isn't anything special in this league and could flame out before the year is out. Moving on now to the Broncos, trading Trinity Benson and a 6th rounder in 2023 to the Lions in exchange for a 5th and 7th rounder in this coming draft. And this is a really interesting move. In the Broncos' first preseason game against the Vikings, he balled out. He had 4 catches for 36 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the second game against the Seahawks, he only had 2 catches for 10 yards. In the last preseason game against the Rams, he had 2 catches for 34 yards. Benson has never gotten into a regular season game. He was an undrafted free agent in 2019 out of East Central, wherever that is. But the weird thing is, he actually has a chance to contribute for the Lions. Think about their wide receiver core. Tyrell Williams, Khalif Raymond, Quintez Cephas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Geronimo Allison, and Sage Surratt. No one's going to be mistaking any of those guys for Calvin Johnson anytime soon. I mean, if you believe strongly in Benson, if he really impressed you, okay, I don't mind you going after him. But to give up a 5th and a 7th? That's notable. That's not nothing. That's 2 picks. I don't care if you're getting a 6th back. You're giving up 2 picks in this coming draft. I can't get behind that. I understand why the Lions did it. There's no question that they need wide receiver help. But the Broncos easily win this trade for getting 2 picks in this coming draft for a guy who wasn't going to crack their opening day roster. Who's he bumping? Cortland Sutton, no. Jerry Jeudy, no. KJ Hamler, no. And Tim Patrick, no. Outstanding job by George Paton. Paton wasn't done, though. He traded a 6th rounder in this coming draft and a 7th rounder in the draft after to the Niners in exchange for a 7th rounder in this coming draft and Jonas Griffith. And this is really interesting. Jonas Griffith was an undrafted free agent last year. Didn't get into any games. For whatever it's worth, he went to Indiana State. Second most famous alum out of Indiana State. Shout out Larry Bird. Got into all 3 preseason games for the Niners and really didn't set the world on fire. He had a 52.6 overall grade according to Pro Football Focus. His tackling was excellent. He had an 81.7 tackling grade. But did you really need to give up a pick for Jonas Griffith? I mean, I thought the Broncos had solid linebacker depth. Justin Stranad, Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, and Derek Tuska. Why did they need to trade for Griffith, a guy who didn't set the world on fire in the preseason? If he's not going to ball out in the preseason, what are the chances of him balling out in the regular season? We're talking about Jonas Griffith here, an undrafted free agent last year out of a basketball school that isn't even a basketball school anymore. You're not going to see any Indiana State cheerleaders on the cover of Sports Illustrated anytime soon. I mean, I really didn't like Griffith last year. I just think this is unnecessary. I can't endorse it. Good job by the Niners in getting something for someone who I think is going to flame out of the NFL sooner rather than later. The last story to talk about is the Eagles trading Matt Pryor and their 7th rounder in this coming draft to the Colts in exchange for their 6th rounder in this coming draft. And I like this move. The number one thing for the Colts is keeping Carson Wentz upright. We know that he has a huge injury history. Plus, Eric Fisher and Ryan Kelly are currently on the COVID list. So the Colts O-line has taken a hit before ever playing a regular season game. It makes a ton of sense for them to target a guy like Pryor. Here's a guy who's young, he's 26, he has starting experience, he started 10 games for the Eagles last year. Didn't set the world on fire. He had a 55.3 overall grade. That's not good by any stretch. But for a backup, I'll take it. I have no problem with the Colts going after Pryor. That makes a ton of sense. Good job by them. They win this trade. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.